Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me, I have an amazing lady. She has credentials up the wazoo, that's a word, and I wanted to introduce her to you so that she can share her expertise and her message. I'm very excited about some of the amazing things that she's doing nowadays. Introducing to you guys, Miss Karen Judd Smith. Thank you very much, Karen, for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. I know that you've got lots of things going on, and our audience members, thank you for tuning in, watching this session. So, Karen, please tell us a little bit about who you are, your background. I know that is extensive in itself, and why you're passionate about what you do and what you're focused on, and then we'll get started from there.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, Dr. L. When you asked me about my background, well, how far do you want me to go back? Okay, we won't go back too far. Let's put it this way, I have had a varied life. Originally from Australia, a little bit of an adventurer. I've sailed, I've jumped, dived, done lots of typical Australian things. In a few different places around the world. But beyond all of that, I guess I've always wanted to know how things work. I'm a dairy farmer's daughter. Physics was my undergraduate degree, and so I wanted to delve into, how things really worked and why. And the further I got into physics, the more ethereal it got. And then I ended up getting involved in philosophy and theology, and good heavens above, I ended up at the United Nations. I don't know whether that sounds practical and pragmatic or not, but that was the long story short of a lot of things. But when you're involved in or wanting to make a difference in the world, when you're wanting to make a difference, one thing in your family and in your community, and then once you get involved in the community, then you realize you've got to go to the next level because there are policies and programs that shape or put the lid on what you can do, what you can't do at your local level. So sooner or later, as you're dealing with some of the global issues or even some of the local issues, you kind of find your way to the UN, because that's where a lot of the parameters, the big picture stuff, is mapped out, or at least that's where we can still have a chance to engage in shaping things at that global level. And for things that are important enough, when it gets to a lot of the issues in the world, sooner or later we realize that we need some pretty decent minds wrestling with the issues. And you discover that the wrestling happens at all levels. But anyway, the UN is still a really important place where a lot of things can't get done, a lot of things can get done. It's a unique place for doing certain things you can't do in other places. And there are things you cannot get done at the UN that really need to be done at the local level. So I still remember many times speaking to people and almost this concept of, I'm trying to keep it in the camera, the concept that you've got one hand and your aspirations and your highest thoughts in the air, and the other one grounded, to the earth. Right. And even to be effective at the UN, you have to have both the vision and the aspirations and the connections and the social capital or political capital or whatever kind of other capital you might need. But you've got to have everything grounded. And grounding ourselves, even just as human beings, is just so important for even being effective at the UN. So there's this odd connectedness between, dreaming and having the highest aspirations and being grounded in who we are as human beings. Right. And so that's kind of, I don't know whether that took you on enough of a journey, but
no, it's a fascinating journey because it's something that most people don't get the opportunity to really experience. And you brought us very nicely through your interests and your background into how you ended up at UN. That's really cool. And then you also mentioned this challenge between being up in the heavens and being grounded at the same time. And ultimately, the gap between all of this needs to be made through collaboration and connectivity and cooperation, all of these different terms that we have for it. So you gain that insight and experience. I can see that. And then now you're kind of bringing that to the everyday life. And that to me is really powerful to see where you're going to end up with this. So tell us a little bit more about the challenges that you see in everyday life that kind of resembles what happens in UN.
Well, I guess perhaps one of the images that I often used. I don't know how many people know where UN headquarters is. I mean, most people know it's in New York, and it's maybe they know it's on First Avenue and between 34th and 48th or whatever, 49th. But it's also on the East River. And if anybody's boated along the East River, or even just stood on the banks of the East River when the tide is turning, you see that the water churns like crazy. So you can see that there is just so much going on underneath that water. And I always used to refer, in my own way of looking at things, was I would call what was going on at the UN East River politics. And it boiled like that, because you have 193 countries, representatives of, I mean, if you think one-on-one negotiations can be challenging, try 193 to 193 and wonder why it's a little tough to get some things done. It can be challenging enough for two partners to find ways to move forward in life in a meaningful way that is constructive and collaborative and respectful and all of those things. Right. So human rights are an important part of life, in our relationships. Anyway, everything that goes on there is not irrelevant to our day-to-day life. It is highly relevant. And so I was only effective at the United Nations to the extent that I was effective with other human beings, to the extent that I could understand what was going on in them and connect with what was not just what they were saying, not just the protocols, not just what should be being done, not what was just expected, but what was really going on inside. What are their deepest concerns, even as a diplomat? What is their mission's immediate challenge? What is their capital, the pressures they're putting on them? What is that poor person contending with in their life? And how can I come in and help them get their goals realized? What is it about my contribution that is unique that can help them? And so all of these kinds of things are really just, how can I, as a mother, as a spouse, as a wife, as a friend, what are my strengths and how can I help you get your needs, wants, aspirations fulfilled? Now, that doesn't happen just because you say, okay, so tell me what you want. It would be nice, but human beings don't work that way. So that's why negotiation is a process and it's a journey. And to make it the most useful and to make it the most fulfilling, meaningful, empowering, then we need to spend a little bit of time in understanding what's below the surface. What is below the surface? Why are those waters roiling and boiling? What's going on in there? How do we attend to those things, as well as what I've got in my own mind that I think is the most important thing right now? It's just being real about being who we are as human beings, and then to distill it down to simple steps that can be done without getting blown away by the complexity of it.
That's powerful. I mean, you mentioned couple of different really important points. One is that even at such a global and international level, you're still dealing with human beings and connecting. But then at the same time, what you're describing on a personal level is that you need to be able to juggle your personal wants
Mhm.
and their needs and their wants
Mhm.
in yourself first before you can even step up to the plate and be able to have the dialogue that results in negotiations and conversation. Because oftentimes when we have an immediate need, we can't see the other person's point of view, and or we are so altruistic that we see the other person's point of view and we forget about our own needs, both of which can create massive challenges.
That's
So
right.
this is really, really powerful to be able to juggle that for ourselves before stepping forward to any conversation in that sense. So that's really cool. All right. So in dealing with these challenges, whether it's day-to-day life or your mission and your purpose in life, what are some of the tips and tricks and secrets that you think people should kind of take action on? Like right after this, the next person you're going to see or you have to deal with, what would be some of the things that would be actionable steps people could do?
Well, if it was Monday, I would say that let's make this Mirror Monday. Mirror Monday. Do you know what a mirrors are?
Yes.
We tend to look at them. I mean, okay, sorry. You, of course, you know what a mirror is. But anyway, but to one another, if we are able to, and when we do, reflect back to one another. I mean, one of the things that we like to do before we leave the house, before we meet somebody important, the first thing we look for is a mirror, a way to see ourselves, because we're always looking out. But what helps us, it helps us to see ourselves. Now, sometimes a lot of what's going on in our life, we're so busy feeling it and dealing with it that we can't always see it so clearly. So one service we can provide one another is to be a mirror. Not a judgmental mirror, not you are the most beautiful in the world. Oh no, Snow White is the most beautiful in the world. No, but just to simply give you the feedback of where we are. Sometimes it's when we can accept who we are that Carl Rogers, I don't know whether people who studied some of these folk, he said one of the ironic things about knowing who we are is that the moment that we can accept where we are, that's when we can move on. So when we're a mirror and we can help other people see themselves perhaps in a way that they haven't seen before because they're too busy with dealing with life, so busy immersed in the situation. So mirrors. Okay, that was kind of the long-winded explanation of why having a mirror. But what I want you to do is to, number one, be curious about seeing what mirrors can do. Number two, and you can do this any time in the day, and it's better to do it when the stakes are not high, because then you can test it out and see what it's like. Number two, listen to what somebody is saying. And then after they've completed their sentence, remember the last 1, 2, 3, maybe even 5 words. And simply repeat it back to them, reflect it back to them. So, say something to me, Dr. L, about anything.
So how did you like the weather yesterday?
The weather yesterday? Did you have any impulse to respond? I only asked.
I did. There's like, yeah, the weather yesterday is that.
and that was a non-issue. We probably should have planned something out. But the interesting thing is when you just simply reflect back a person's words and then pause, give that space, create in another situation space. I call that kind of like a sacred space, because silence, allowing people place to move, to grow, to expand, is a kind of a you could call it a pregnant pause for the women involved who know what that's like, expanding the space. But silence is a very important tool as we communicate, and allow the other, even if we have to count 1, 2, 3, or bite our lips for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but invite the other to step up and say more. And it's
Right.
in that moment, those mirrors that will perhaps surprise, especially when you get to, that was how was the weather? But if it's a more pressing issue, you never listen to me.
Mhm.
You never listen to me. I never listen to you. You turn it into a question that's reflecting back what they are saying, and you're inviting.
Right. In fact, when you asked me the question, I did notice that it made me think about how did I like the weather yesterday? So it made me reflect internally about the
Right.
question that you just asked. So
Right.
in that sense, it was effective.
It's a very simple little thing. So I would encourage you, to make every day this week your Mirror Monday, and just try it out. Just when you remember, because it'll take a while for you to remember to even use your mirrors, but test it out and see what it does. I've had people come back to me in my class, and at the end of the day, they go home and they just try it out in a moment with their spouse or with their children. And then they come back next week saying, you won't believe, I was so surprised.
Hmm.
People get excited by discovering that, number one, they don't have to jump in and say something to fill the space themselves. They don't have to have the answers to everything. And that by having a little sequence of steps to do and focus on doing those steps, it actually creates an opportunity for a different dynamic.
That's actually very powerful, because it takes the pressure off of an individual. And by having that pressure off, you will feel less threatened, less responsible. And you can actually become part of a conversation, as opposed to this person that has to run the show type of a thing. So that's very powerful. Karen, these things, I know they're subtle, but they make a huge impact, and it can have really deep influences in all aspects of life. So how can people find out more about you and connect with you and learn to work with you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I'm a simple soul, so and you can reach out by email. You can send me a tweet, or we can meet on in VR and we can chat. Sorry, that's me going to my playful side. But anyway, no, I think I've got a few different places. I've got the Exceptional Academy, my Twitter, and the usual LinkedIn. Please just PM me, send me a personal message, or connect. Alternatively, jump on and join one of our classes. I think you'll walk away from it very surprised, with raised eyebrows. I like to think of it as, I help people, raise their eyebrows, get surprised and delighted by life, so that they're not afraid of negotiating, because they've got some simple steps and tools that they didn't have before, and that open up not Pandora's box, but that open up new areas of possibility that are just simply exciting. I mean, life is amazing. It's challenging too, but it's really an amazing. Human beings are utterly amazing, and to optimize that, especially for our families and our loved ones, is just one of the most meaningful and valuable things that we can do. So please just reach out. I've got an app. You can look for Exceptional without the E, just Exceptional on either the App Store or Google Play. Download it. That's just one way to get connected.
Okay, yeah. I will make sure that we put all the links in the description box for our audience members. Guys, please take advantage of this resource. It's amazing, and find a way to connect. That's actually the first step in actually creating these bonds, right? It's to connect. So go ahead and check the description box and the links that are provided there for you. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure you hit subscribe so you get informed and notified of the latest experts, gifts, and services and passions that show up on Experts Cafe. Karen, thank you so much for being here and really giving your expertise and sharing your wisdom with our audience members. We look forward to further collaborations with you, and we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
And Dr. L, thank you.
My